And good Tuesday evening. Welcome to our fifth edition of the Central Florida Blitz as we take a look at Week 8, look back at Week 8, look ahead to Week 9 of high school football in the Central Florida area. From Orlando up over to Melbourne up to Daytona. We're going to talk about the next 30 minutes about all kinds of stuff going on. We'll have our Pick 6 coming up. Also look at the state rankings according to FloridaHSFootball.com. Marty Pallman along with Joshua Wilson, owner and publisher of FloridaHSFootball.com. And Josh, a little bit different week for us this week. And again, if you were looking for our playoff preview show at 6 o'clock, well, we didn't have it because, again, the FHSA didn't release anything today. So.
No, tonight was one of those. It's been a wacky week already. But then again, we always have a wacky week somewhere in the season. So
it might as well be Week 9, I guess. But there'll be a lot of districts decided this week, and of course, most of them next week in Week 10. But a lot to talk about, and let's go ahead and get started. The Blitz Lines for Central Florida. And we're going to start, as we have a few times this year, in Orange City. University Titans win again. They're 7-0 as they knock off Spruce Creek, their rival, 22-12. So the Titans continuing with one of their best seasons probably in school history.
Yeah, this will be probably by far the best season for Orange City University, which, by the way, is still a young school in a lot of retrospects. I think they opened in 2010. So when you look at the retrospects of some of the programs they're beating, it really is a big, massive difference when you start. But new coaching this year, everything, the players are staying home, but, the thing is what makes it interesting is that, when we talk about this, what's coming up this week is a huge game, in Orange City University, sitting here, part of me says maybe enjoy the next few days because you've got a big one coming up here on Friday night that is going to decide a lot of things, and we'll talk about it here coming up here in our Pick 6, and that is the game between DeLand and Orange City University.
Yeah, it is, and DeLand's coming in off a tough loss to Seminole, but a loss that may not even really cost them at all. It's 49-42. What a game there.
I mean, let's talk about that one because the Battle of the Bridge, as they call that rivalry game, a long-time rivalry game between Sanford Seminole and DeLand. I know you have it all here on the list there of the Blitz Lines, and might as well go ahead and talk about that because it co-relates into all of this here. And Marty, for everything that this game is, what the Battle of the Bridge. I mean, DeLand, Rick Darlington. This is classic when Rick Darlington wants to get you into a high scoring, barn burner. This is what happens.
Right, exactly.
Except that they just didn't come up on the winning side of this one, but nonetheless, it's a good quality loss in a lot of ways for DeLand because Sanford Seminole their schedule they played. It's been great, and then of course DeLand's played a really good schedule so far too. So at the end of the day, there is no losers in this. It's all winners.
Right. DeLand had not lost a game since week 1 when they were beaten by Mainland. They won 5 in a row since until this game. So they've lost 2 games to really quality teams. And then, as you said, this week, we'll talk about this in the Pick 6. They'll head to University. So that will be a really big district game for both DeLand and the University Titans. So DeLand Bulldogs on a tough loss, but again, they'll have that game this week. And
oh yeah,
as we look around Central Florida, still the unbeaten teams. You mentioned University, Edgewater again 8-0. They're all over Ocoee 46-0. The Edgewater Eagles continue to roll.
And then Mainland 7-0, blanking Daytona. So I mean, talk about 2 of the teams that are undefeated. And of course, there's one more undefeated team in that region, and that is Lake Mary sitting there 7-0, and of course that'll be another team we'll talk about coming up here.
Yeah, they got a game at Apopka this week, and
oh yes,
Mainland's got to host Osceola. Those will all be in our Pick 6. Yeah, all those teams unbeaten. One team that was unbeaten going into last week was the Titusville Terriers. They're not anymore because Cocoa went in there and handled them 28-3. As we, Cocoa, of course they did. I mean, it was going to be a tough one for Titusville, but they're 7-1 now. They're having a really good year. Cocoa also only with that one loss still.
Yeah, and when we talk about this, Cocoa and Titusville, I mean, it was going to be Titusville's biggest test of the year, outside of playing Calvary Christian out of Fort Lauderdale, and Titusville just didn't have the mustard to match up with Cocoa's ketchup, as they say. And that's what happened there. And, Titusville, handed their first loss of the season. But Titusville is not even remotely out of the stretch of the playoff talk. They definitely will be a playoff-bound team, just probably not in the top 3 or 4 in my mind right in a second, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they'll have their rival, the Astronaut War Eagles, this week on the schedule. So, although Astronaut has struggled, so probably not a.
It's probably going to not be a pretty game there for Astronaut, but a game that Titusville will gladly take in stride and probably get their win number 8 this week, and kind of look at things kind of ahead and try to figure out what's next.
Yeah, the beat kind of goes on though for those other teams, as we mentioned, University, Edgewater and Mainland both staying unbeaten, and they outscored their opponents by combined 111-0. So no trouble there. Although Mainland will have a little bit tougher game this week with Osceola. Not the best Osceola team at 2-5, but Osceola is coming in with a couple wins in a row into that game.
Yes, again, Osceola has struggled this year, but their strength of schedule is probably one of the best in the state in terms of when you look at teams that Osceola has played. I mean, we're talking about teams like Treasure Coast. We're talking, we're just talking quality top tier teams. I mean, along the way here, and when we're talking about Osceola's team, the number, for Osceola here, that's what I want to bring up here is that schedule here that Osceola has played here so far here in terms of during the season, and of course that schedule alone, oh, that's the wrong Osceola there.
I think you put Seminole Osceola.
Yeah. I'm trying to get the right Osceola here because it's, you don't type in the right one and you get the wrong one, and that's where you have the issue at here. Okay, so Osceola 2-5 here. The Cowboys 2-5 here. Of course, looking at it, like Marty, as you said, 2 straight wins so far, but it's been, 2 district games, St. Cloud and Celebration, 49-3, 56-0. Let's talk about it. Treasure Coast, they lost 22-8. Sanford Seminole, they lost 31-6. They lost 28-20 to Jones. They lost 26-0 to Lakeland. 19-16 to Rockledge. Those are your first 5 games of the season.
Yeah.
And they were all losses, but all teams that are quality programs and have quality schedules, and that's the big thing.
Yeah, that's important, and I think that's going to help Osceola as they get towards the postseason. But, again, this week against Mainland, a team that's been rolling, I expect that they're going to give Mainland a pretty good ball game, even though that game is at Daytona Stadium this week. Mainland will be home for that game.
And that's a Thursday night game, by the way, at a 7 o'clock kickoff. I know there's going to say 7:30 on Max Press, but it's not. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff at Daytona Stadium. Mainland goes at 7 o'clock kicks. But I got to say this, next week, the district championship in their district, which is in the District 4S10, Tohopa Caliga's 5-2. But that 5-2 compared to the 2-5 that Osceola is, night and day. Osceola is a better team. And when we're talking about this, considering the fact that Toho just barely beat Gulf Breeze, who made the long road trip to Central Florida last week to play Toho, and Toho came out 18-14. I'm not discrediting Toho in terms of the case of games winning. Okay, just the thing. But when it comes to the strength of schedule and the comparisons, it is very much night and day what Osceola is to what Toho is, and that's going to, even though it's a district championship game next week, I expect okay, Osceola might lose this week, but when the rest of the schedule go in the playoffs 4-6 as a district champ. But you know what? At the end of the day, that strength of schedule for Osceola is going to help them. All right, you played that tough schedule. You played these great teams. You may go in there with 6 losses here. Okay, well, what's not to say that during the playoffs day, all of a sudden they do some shock and awe.
Right, the shock and awe, of course.
Do some shock and awe. I mean, hey, we got to remind people Jefferson County won a state championship in 2011. They were 5-5 in the regular season, won their district, got into the playoffs, and won a state championship, the world championship, the first
record.
year. Yeah, 9-5. So a state championship winning team with 5 losses, or maybe even 6, it's possible.
Well, I mean, I remember one year, I think Clay played for the state title with 4 or 5 losses, and I think North Marion had like 4 losses when they played and made it. So, yeah, it happens. And by the way, Trinity Catholic might do it this year. They're 2-5 with that schedule. They may win. Last year, they were the 1S championship game. They might make it there with like a record of 3-7 or something in the postseason.
It's crazy to think about this, but again, these records are, it's and this is where I have the one issue with the FHA playoff power rankings. Of course, if you were looking for those, we did not have them this week. I mean, there's still technical difficulties going on because the rankings still haven't been updated. So it's most likely we won't see an update until tomorrow.
Yeah, we could have driven over to the FHSA headquarters by now and gotten them probably because it's 10 minutes away. But yeah, that's hopefully those will come out tomorrow, I would think.
I hope so because I know a lot of people are wanting to know what's going on, what's happening, and we usually break it down here every week, but not so the case here this week, and that's why everything seems to be crazy and off and all that. So, but
right, a lot going on in a lot of different ways. But go ahead.
You want to take a water break real quick?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to do. Let's take a 60-second water break. Let's get ourselves some water ourselves, and when we come back, we'll look more at the Blitz lines, and then coming up, the pick six, as well as the rankings for Central Florida. This is the Central Florida Blitz. All right, we're back.
Yes, we are back here. Welcome back here on the Central Florida Blitz. I'm Joshua Wilson. That is Marty Pallman over there, and we're rolling along here.
At our hydration break, we're back and continuing on with our look back at Week 8, and we'll take a look at Week 9 in just a moment here in Central Florida. As we also next time we're going to take a look at last week, Olympia coming off the loss to Apopka. And they rebound with a win over their rival, Dr. Phillips, 31-21. Big win for the Olympia Titans this past week.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, got to give it to Olympia. They bounced back after a 2-point loss to Apopka the week before in week 7. And of course, now week 8, they edged Dr. Phillips here and are on track for a district championship now. And of course, but there's another game that's critical to that district there in District 4M5 that we're going to talk about here on our pick 6. And that is the game between Dr. Phillips and West Orange, which is let's say it's the Battle of the Orange Crate. I want to say it's a rivalry game.
That is a rivalry game. You're right, and that's coming up this week. Dr. Phillips, not having their best season, but after the loss to Olympia, but they have a chance to get a win against the West Orange team that actually is under 500 right now. We mentioned the team that got its first loss of the season last week, Titusville. Another team that got the first loss of the season, Orlando Christian Prep, and they lost to Bishop Moore, which probably shouldn't be a really a bad loss. Bishop Moore, since starting 0-3, has now won 4 in a row.
Yes, absolutely.
Bishop Moore won 25-15.
By the way, you know what Bishop Moore is quite capable of because of Bishop Kenny going down there and playing them in there in week 4. And of course, Bishop Moore struggled out of the gate 0-3, and of course they got their first win against Bishop Kenny. Now 4-3 on the season. They have done nothing but win since that.
That's right, and of course they're a dangerous team, as we found out last year in the first round of the playoffs. Bishop Kenny did. So and Bishop Moore is going to win their district. I mean, the only other team was it Lake Buena Vista. That's it, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, by the way, I didn't look in the comments here, but Shane Simmons says hello to us. But hey, Shane, Lake Wales, we'll talk about them coming up in the Gulf Coast Blitz at sometime about 9 o'clock or a little afterwards. Okay, so to stay tuned. We'll have the Lake Wales Highlanders. Well, that's one of the subjects there to talk about. So we will talk about Lake Wales and everything there. So, but stay tuned. We appreciate y'all watching here on the Central Florida Blitz, Marty, and let's continue on here about with some of the other things going on around Central Florida. And of course, when you look at some of these teams, do I feel like there is a potential state champion that could come out of Central Florida this year? And the answer is yes, and probably in multiple classes.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And I think we're on maybe a collision course here to see Edgewater and St. Thomas Aquinas for the state title in 3M.
And that wouldn't be the first time that they've done a collision course, by the way.
Then again, Homestead, Armwood, and Tampa Bay Tech are still back there as well. So there's some teams that have something to say about it. But that's right. That has happened before. We've had classic games between them, but in the past. And I think that we might be heading that way again because both teams, Edgewater is unbeaten. They've just been rolling. St. Thomas has that one loss to the top one team in the nation, I believe, or one of the top teams in the nation.
St. Thomas had a loss to St. John Bosco, who ended up actually getting a loss in Hawaii a couple weeks ago. So, but I'll tell you, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, St. Thomas Aquinas, really, when we say that, St. Thomas Aquinas probably should have 2 losses on the record. Should be 6-2, not 7-1. But I digress there, so we'll leave it at that because this is Central Florida, not South Florida.
And that is that came at the expense of Cocoa. Cocoa, who is 6-1, but we seem to think Cocoa is basically should be undefeated right now.
Yes,
and that was a tough loss for them. They haven't lost since. In fact, we will talk about the. Let's go ahead and take a look at the top 25 for FloridaHSFootball.com and the teams from Central Florida, because the highest ranked team for the Central Florida area is the Cocoa Tigers.
Yes, absolutely. And, when we're talking about that, looking at that, some of the teams here, the Cocoa Tigers are sitting there at 6, Mainland 8, Edgewater 9. And then, of course, we go down and we find Lake Mary sitting there at 12. Of course, the top 25 really didn't change much other than Miami Central moving down a couple spots. Everybody else kind of stayed the same here in terms of the rankings. But Sanford Seminole sitting there at 16. And, of course, we get down a little further, and that's about it, what we got right there. But when we look at Class 4M, quite a bit of Central Florida sits there in the Class 4M rankings, which is where it's very heavy at right now. Of course, Lake Mary sitting there at 1 and overall the top team in Class 4M. Sanford Seminole sitting there at number 4, Winter Park 6. We got Apopka sitting there at number 10, and of course Olympia is sitting right there on the bubble there in 4M.
Right, they are, and a little surprising maybe Olympia with 2 losses, but right now they are on the bubble. So. Apopka just sitting right there at number 10, as you said. They moved back in after beating Olympia. So, that has been an interesting year for Apopka. They really struggled at times, but now they've started to seem like it maybe right the ship. And the same thing for Olympia there in 4M.
By the way, I want to take a moment here, Marty, before we get into our pick 6. Right. The thoughts and prayers go out to the family of John Perry, the longtime editor-in-chief at the Apopka Chief. He passed away unexpectedly late last week on Thursday morning. Age of 67, died very unexpectedly, died in his sleep peacefully. Our heartfelt prayers and everything go out to John and his family, and then, of course, his loving wife, who Grace, and his daughter Kristen, who have had a very difficult few days. They had the funeral earlier today. One of the public funeral there at Apopka High School, the service, and it's John was very much everything Apopka. Everybody called him Apopka John. He roamed the sidelines every week. I always looked forward to having Apopka John's tweets every Friday night, and I'll tell you, I was in shock. Thursday morning, I was driving back to Gainesville, and I got the call from Dan LaForest, and it just hit. It was shocking because it's you don't sometimes, and you can't take life for granted in a lot of ways, and this is one of those things like we're never guaranteed tomorrow, and
at the age of 67, still pretty young, and after just losing my dad earlier this year, he was in his early 70s, so we always kind of think we should have more years with folks, but you're right, it's just anything can happen. It's sad to hear, but he was a very good steward for Apopka, as you said, always covering Apopka football, always on the sideline, and there was a lot of success. Apopka's had a lot of success through the years, so we
and they did something. I don't have the photo thing, but it's been shared on social media between the many of the Apopka accounts that are out there, and of course people that are heavily invested in Apopka football, and of course what John did, and they painted on the field and for John, because they were hosting Lake Brantley Friday night, and they it was a homecoming game, by the way, I think, as well for Apopka, and they honored him with his JP initials on the field. in honor of John Perry. And
nice.
John was everything Apopka, and of course Dan LaForest. I pretty much know John all his life, because Dan played at Apopka as a quarterback in the late 1980s, and of course John was roaming the sidelines then reporting, and so John was everything to Apopka. John was, he was a great reporter, but even a better family man, and he loved his Tennessee Volunteers. He was a Apopka Blue Daughter and Tennessee Volunteers. That was the only thing I ever disagreed with John Perry on was Tennessee Volunteers.
Right.
That's because as a Gator fan, what do you do?
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, we miss John, and he's going to be deeply missed. And get our thoughts out to John's family, and of course his wife Grace and his daughter Kristen.
Yeah, it's a nice tribute there for him, and yeah, as you said, condolences to his family, and we'll check out and see how Apopka does the rest of this season. Now the Blue Darters head to the postseason, and we can make a run there in memory of John to towards the state championship.
Yes, always enjoyed when John was there, especially on the sidelines, especially state championship games, because you always knew that John Perry, that was the one fixture that was going to be there, was John Perry.
Many years there, and Orlando, the Citrus Bowl, Cape World Stadium.
Yes.
Apopka made it there many times. But all right, well, before we go on this edition of the Central Florida Blitz, it is time, as we do every week, for the music to play, which means the Pick Six is here.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, I thought I had it set in this thing for the first games, but hold on, let me get it fixed here, and that way we can talk about it, because we made mention of it here for that game here, and we will now pop it up here, and that is the land at University.
As my one friend joked one time, I asked, "Where's the land?" He said, "Next to the ocean." So our friend from the FHSA, Seth Polanski, many years ago. But anyway, this is game of the week, really, between these two. And
it's going to decide a district championship in District 4S9. I'm telling you that right now, because they're both 2-0 in that district, and somebody has to win this district. And this is for all the marbles on the line. And this is, I got to compare it. If you look at the schedule, in my mind, between these two teams, DeLand has played a better schedule at 5-2 compared to Orange City University at 7-0. And really, Marty, my pick this week is on Rick Darlington and the DeLand Bulldogs in that single wing offense. Whatever Rick is running now, I think that he's probably running that single wing offense like he did at Apopka. He's doing the same thing at DeLand. He's building DeLand into a program. DeLand's going to be a force in the playoffs this year at 4S. DeLand will be a force.
Right.
And if you think I'm joking, well, we'll see you on the flip side in a few weeks in the playoffs.
Yeah, DeLand, you're right. They've had the history through the years. This has been a program that's really been successful. University, as we said earlier, they're new to this, really, at 7-0. But, they're having a great year. And this game is at University, at Orange City. But I don't know. I'm kind of with you. DeLand has 2 losses to Mainland and Seminole. You can't really – that's nothing to sneeze at. And so I would say,
absolutely not.
Even though it's at University, I'm with you. I kind of like DeLand to take this game.
No, absolutely. And see, all right, Michael Parsons joining in, and Marty, he's even got DeLand.
Close to beating Seminole last week. Yeah, 49-42, right? So, I think we say that as well. So, we both take DeLand in that game. Next up, we have, we talked about this a little bit as well, the unbeaten Lake Mary Rams. And they will head to Apopka to take on the Blue Darters.
Lake Mary is 7-0 on the season. Scott Perry, who is the dean of coaches down there in Central Florida, outside of Rick Darlington, if you really start to place all these years together down there.
Right.
But in terms of, continuous at one school or continuous in coaching, down in Central Florida, that's Scott Perry. Lake Mary, they have a quarterback now, Noah Grubbs, a sophomore. He just went over 2,000 yards this season last week. This is tough. As much as I like Apopka at home, Roger Williams Field is a tough place to play for a lot of teams. I said except for Edgewater, who beat them 27-0 earlier this year. But Apopka, this is not the same type of Apopka team that they have had, over the last few years. But Apopka, I got to remind people, Apopka can make deep playoff runs and get to the state championship game with 4 losses. They've done it before. There's a chance they could do it again here with 4 losses. I'm going with Lake Mary in this game just because I think Lake Mary is definitely been, the better team at this particular conjecture.
Is there a state title in the future for Lake Mary? They're ranked number 1 in 4M. They're unbeaten. You do have, of course, Columbus and Palmetto and Seminole still there in the back as well. But this Lake Mary team has been impressive. I know Apopka's been up and down, starting to play better, but I'm with you. I think that while Michael Parsons says can't compare schedules,
Michael,
and he's right, but I just think Blue Darter are getting better. That's true, but I take Lake Mary as well in this game.
And this is the thing. My question is the Blue Darter O getting better a little too late? Blue Darter O would have been helped if they gotten better during the Edgewater game? Yes, because I think that would have probably staved off some couple other things. I think this is why, again, this is, the game being at a Apopka. I would take a Apopka in most instances, but I'm having a hard time when Lake Mary has been really rolling here, and that's my thing. And this is where I gotta go Lake Mary. I'm just going with my intuition here on this one. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, sounds good to me. All right, moving on. Mainland, what a year the Bucks are having, and they host Osceola this weekend. By the way, Mainland, Osceola 2-5, Mainland 7-0. Normally this would be a pretty good game, but I think Mainland's going to win this game pretty handily.
I'm going Mainland as well, and but I wouldn't be surprised if Osceola does give him a game. Eric Pinellas, he'll have his Cowboys ready to play. But as we talked to him last week, those boys are just really totally in it and everything, and you got to give Mainland the credit. You took care of business like you were supposed to against Daytona. You didn't let anything happen. You didn't let any cracks in the ceiling happen. You took care of them and beat them 65-0. But Osceola's different than Daytona. They're not Daytona by any means on the record. So
no, and in general, you're right. Daytona is really struggling this year, winless, and Cowboys need this game. Michael Parsons.
You're right, Michael. The Osceola needs this game. What would even be better for Osceola is to pull the upset on Mainland.
Definitely.
I just don't see it here. This is definitely a Mainland Buccaneers game. The biggest thing here, the game really we're going to be talking about in a couple of weeks from now is when Mainland hosts Lake Mary
right
in Week 11. That is going to be one of the top games of the week in the entire state that week in Week 11.
Right.
So, but this game's nonetheless worth a watch between Osceola and Mainland. So.
Here's another rivalry game. This over on the Atlantic coast.
Merritt Island and Rockledge.
In Brevard County there, right?
Yes, it is.
Rockledge. Yeah, this is an interesting ball game as well. Both teams, I think Merritt Island comes in 5-2. Rockledge 4. The records are fairly similar.
Rockledge is sitting there 4-3. Rockledge beat out. Yeah, Rockledge. They played Trinity Christian this year.
Yeah, it took them to OT. That's true.
And but I think the big thing is I don't have Rockledge ranked right now because the thing is that Rockledge has struggled. But Merritt Island, they're sitting there kind of in the mix. I've not got them in the bubble right now because there's some other teams sitting there. I mean, if you really want to talk about a classification that is really, really good, Class 3S is that one classification. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, yeah, that's where Mainland is. That's where St. Augustine is. That's where Lake Wales and Vanguard. You're right. It's loaded. O'Galley.
And O'Galley, I think O'Galley's going to end up winning that district this year. And I think O'Galley and Rockledge play next week. I don't think they've played yet. I'm going to pull that up here real quick here and let you know here and just get that thing. But the big thing is that for Merritt Island, they're not the same Merritt Island as we saw a couple years ago.
Right.
And Rockledge is definitely not the same Rockledge they've been over the last few years. I'll give those things. But in this situation here, and just looking at these two teams, Rockledge and O'Galley is next week. So in this situation, Merritt Island needs this game to stay in the mix for the title hunt. Sitting there in District 3S10.
Yeah, well, they probably do. I'm not taking them. I'm taking Rockledge at home.
You're taking Rockledge because this district is between Rockledge and O'Galley.
Yeah, I think so. And O'Galley is 6-1.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In O'Galley, I mean, their only loss, I believe, is to Bishop Moore. Actually, I want to say
that is correct. No, actually, O'Galley beat Bishop Moore.
So I'm trying to remember who's O'Galley's loss. I'm pulling up.
They didn't play Mainland, did they?
No, I'm trying to remember exactly who was their one loss to, and it was the Cocoa. I'm sorry, my apologies.
Okay,
they beat Bishop Moore, It was the Coco that was the loss. I'm sorry.
Ooh,
That's my mistake. My apologies.
That's not a bad loss.
Now, O'Galley beat Merritt Island 12-11. So they've got a Bayside this week. They were off last week. They got Bayside this week, and then of course Rockledge. So O'Galley will take care of Bayside. It's that game next week that we'll probably have on the picks. It's O'Galley and Rockledge. It's going to be a key critical game here.
Yep. So we got Rockledge here on both these games. Michael Parsons just says Rockledge.
Well,
both teams schizophrenic. Which team show up? Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to another rivalry game. This one in the city of Orlando. Dr. Phillips and West Orange.
Actually in Winter
Garden.
Yeah, going to Winter Garden.
Dr. Phillips is in Orlando, but they are rivals, not far from each other. And Dr. Phillips is kind of having an up and down season. So is West Orange. Neither team ranked in the state poll. Dr. Phillips coming off that loss to Olympia. I'm going to go with the home team here and take West Orange to win this ball game. They really need to win.
And of course, this is the battle of the old orange trade, as they say. And Dr. Phillips, West Orange. This is a tough one. I mean, if this was a Dr. Phillips, I take Dr. Phillips. But I'm going West Orange. And what was your pick again, Marty?
West Orange. Yep.
All right, we're going to go with the West Orange Warriors here with the Dr. Phillips Panthers, and we're going to call it that one. But I think West Orange gets the victory, but it could be close. But this next one is going to be really interesting. This is
district title game.
No, it's not. No. Edgewater's clinched that district.
Oh, I'm sorry. So this will be
between Wekiva and Jones.
Yes, the winner of this probably in the playoffs, or at least helps themselves.
Now, Wekiva and Jones. This is critical for both teams. This is going to decide, game. If both teams make the playoffs, this game will have a lot of impact on where they get landed at in terms of the seeding.
Okay.
Wekiva blew out Horizon last week, so Horizon's not a factor. Wekiva and Jones. This game has got a lot riding here, and whoever loses is going to be hurting. But this is at Jones.
What's the classification?
3M.
All right, I was trying to find
And Jones is sitting there in the top 10.
They're ranked 9th, yep. Wekiva unranked. Yeah, I'll tell you what, Jones, I'm a little surprised at their 4-3 record, but as usual, they played
a tough schedule.
So I like Jones at home, literally under the shadow of Camping World Stadium, Jones High School, to win this game and keep themselves in the postseason.
Yeah, and Keith Simmons joins in and says, how about this one? He says Jones with the win, and Michael Parsons, he's going with it as well, going with Tigers physical game.
All right. So
I agree with you, Michael. That will be a physical game for both teams.
So we're taking Jones. All right.
So yes.
All right, that's it. Hey, the music just ran out on time. How about that?
No, I turned it down.
Oh, did you? Okay, never mind. I was like, man, that was perfect timing. We finished the pick 6 and all. I felt better when I knew that, so you could have just told me that, but that's okay. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Central Florida Blitz. We appreciate you watching, and we will have this next week back at our normal time. We were a little behind tonight due to technical difficulties, 8:30 to 9 next week. Also, we will bring you our playoff breakdown show next week, 6 to 7.
As long as there's nothing.
Hopefully, yeah. We'll see. But that's going to do it for now. Enjoy week 9 of high school football in Central Florida. We'll talk to you again next week. For Joshua Wilson, I'm Marty Pallman. So long.